English translation, 226th contact. Friday, 3rd February 1989. Dashro por 1 hours.
On your day, I am to deliver special greetings and wishes to you from all who are known to you.
Pay everyone my heartfelt thanks. I am very delighted that they all think of me. But what about your time today? Is it enough that you can answer some questions for me?
I am not in a hurry, if you mean that.
Exactly. Then I can just start with the questions?
That you can.
You once said that solar radiation is dangerous for humans because sunburn arises from over-radiation on the unprotected skin, which is clear. But at the same time, you also mentioned that black cancer develops from it, even if the sunburn would only repeat itself in a minimal form. Moreover, it does not matter, as I recall, whether it would only be 10 or whether it would be 50 or more years after the first sunburn. In any event, the first sunburn of the skin plays the leading role because the factors were based on the fact that the black cancer or skin cancer could be triggered. So far, this is clear. However, you also said something about artificial light sources that are just as dangerous as solar radiation. Unfortunately, you then gave no other explanations about this, which is why I want to ask you about it now.
Yes, your explanation is of correctness, because I really gave no explanatory remarks regarding the addressed. So listen then. Artificial light is harmless, just as little as also solar radiation. Also, every artificial light emits radiation that is harmful to health, whereby the most diverse illnesses can then be triggered, like, for example, various forms of cancer. However, all sorts of nervous disorders as well as cell variations, asthma, headaches, nausea, muscle aches, memory impairment, reproductive damage, and concentration damage, as well as various other ailments, can occur due to excessive artificial light rays and artificial swinging waves. Artificial light can, therefore, have a very negative and dangerous impact on the health of humans, and of course, the light intensity, radiation intensity, and swinging wave intensity are of importance. In order to counteract this evil, it is necessary that the light sources are constructed and secured in such a manner that the health hazardous factors do not appear.
It will, however, still take a long time before that is realized here on the Earth and something is done about it. With us, the erroneous acceptance prevails that a lot of light would be health-promoting, etc.
That is, in principle, also of correctness. But that only applies when the health-endangering factors of artificial light sources are turned off. And as you say, it will still actually take a long time before the earthly scientists responsible for this will recognize the stated facts. And it will still take much longer before the decisive ways and means are found to produce harmless artificial light.
That probably will not be in this century and millennium because everything is probably still very distant future music, right?
That is of correctness, my friend. Decades will still pass before the insights relating to this mature. And it will still take a very long time before the means and ways are found to eliminate the harmful factors of artificial light. The same applies to electricity.
That probably means that also the swinging waves of electricity on humans, and probably also on animals and plants, birds, fish and insects, etc., produce pathogenic effects. At the same time, I think of electromagnetic waves, as these come from power lines or electric lines, as well as from electrical appliances and radio equipment, as well as transmission towers for radio and television, etc. Is this meant by your reference to electricity?
That is of correctness. In the coming time, however, the whole thing will still increase because the progress will bring with it that small, portable communication devices, which will then be called mobile devices or mobile phones and so on, which will become mass-produced items for the Earth humans, Consequently, there will only be few who will not then equip themselves with such devices, which will very often find only pointless uses. The whole thing will spread as a disease of technological progress and will cost many human lives. This, on the one hand, through the dangerous radiation emitted by the devices and, on the other hand, also because these devices will be used irresponsibly at every impossible and possible opportunity, like when driving cars, etc., through which attention and control are weakened and fatal accidents, etc., are caused.
Damage is the price of unreasonableness. However, it will then surely be denied by the manufacturers of such mobile phones that these devices emit harmful radiation.
That will be the case for a long time because the responsible persons will not want to let their business with such devices be ruined. Therefore, they will let falsified analyses be produced by notable places with bribes, which should prove that the radiation of the devices is harmless.
I can vividly imagine that. But now tell me, it was not very long ago that we talked about wars, etc., and you told me that I should compose writings around the turn of the millennium, which have to be directed against an impending war. This is because a certain U.S. president named Bush Jr. will want to launch a war in Iraq, in order to get to the oil there as well as to exact revenge for the war which his father will bring, at the beginning of the 90s, over Iraq, and which he will lose, as you said. Outside of our open conversation, you also said that this Bush Jr. was or had been a drunkard and is now turning to sectarianism, and that he becomes of the delusion that he has to clean the earth of Islam, so to speak, as God's avenger and as God's representative. If I remember correctly, you called him an unscrupulous and degenerate good-for-nothing, who is valid in the eyes of his father as a zero and a failure. With the Iraq war that he wants to allow to be released, if I also remember correctly in this respect, you said that this would be, at the earliest, in March of the year 2003, from which World War III could result under certain circumstances or the preliminary work for it, with this Iraq war. The coward, once he has come to power, wants to prove to his daddy that he is not a zero and not a failure, and that he can very well exact revenge and retaliate for his dad's war failure. And now the long and short of it. Through Bush Jr., whom you have also called a madman, will the war now actually break out in the year 2003 or not? You later mentioned the month of March, which would be especially precarious in that the war can actually no longer be avoided. In this respect, do you now have more insights through your foresight, or does it simply remain with your given information?
I have in fact gained further insights in the meantime, and these are unpleasant. The war will be inevitable through the criminal irresponsibility and power obsession of the American president, George W. Bush, and will already secretly begin through the invasion of Iraq and through the bombing of superior anti-aircraft defenses in the early evening of the 18th of March, 2003, which will officially be denied, however. The beginning of the military attack of the American armed forces with a rocket attack on Baghdad will first become official, however, on the date of the 20th of March at 5:33 a. my Middle Eastern time. The first wave of the real large-scale attack, however, will be several hours later, which will have in its entire extent such an impact as has never been the case before in any war on the earth. With this, the newest, most modern heavy weapons will be used, such as rockets and bombs, which will be of extremely accurate target precision and cause great destruction, and through which also many human beings will die. However, neither the war criminal rulers of America nor those of Iraq will care about this, as well as not those of England and Australia and all others who will irresponsibly participate in this war.
And Bush, this war criminal, will then, of course, be called to account just as little as also all those who will move with him in the same direction, and be equally guilty in every respect as he himself. For if the criminal pack wins, then they are not regarded as war criminals, as this is usually just so on Earth, but as victors and heroes.
That is of correctness. These are victors and heroes of very dubious reputation, who are truly criminals against humanity as well as tyrants, despots, dictators, and terrorists, and who indeed are the same as those who are accused of evil by these war criminals, some of whom are known to you from an earlier time.
I know, yes, like for example, the young Saddam Hussein and 2 of his young doubles. With him, I have made the interesting finding that under one eye, probably under the right one, he has a birthmark, which continually twitches around on his face when he gets excited.
I know nothing about that.
Let us leave that and talk about something else, for the whole thing brings nothing with it anyways. Here, I have written down a series of questions, which I would like to have answered. It's about the terms single and abstinence, as you Pleiarans understand these. As I know, your conceptions of these differ from those that prevail here with us on Earth. First of all, the term single. Please explain what you understand by it.
You know the meaning, nevertheless.
Now I say it again, that is of correctness. But explain it once again, so that I can immediately write it down in accordance with your words, for I am often asked in the aforementioned direction.
If that is so. With us, single means that a woman is without a man, or that a man is without a woman, and, therefore, that no marital constraint is given. This also applies when a marital relationship once existed, but one of the partners has passed away.
So with you, it is not then referred to as widowed, but simply and plainly as single again.
That is of correctness.
But what about when a marriage ends in divorce?
The same rule would apply?
What should that mean?
That with us, marriages no longer end in divorce.
You must explain the grounds for that to me.
With us, at the 14th year of age, the full responsibility for the female and male gender begins, and from this time, one can devote oneself to a life partner with whom one lives in an unmarried relationship during the following period up to the 68th year of life. During this period, it is decided whether the 2 partners will remain together for their entire lifetimes or not. In this time, which represents an actual probationary period, the couple can decide for a final, lifelong relationship or to separate at their sole discretion at any time. If no separation takes place, then an additional 2-year probationary period is attached, during which the couple has to separate and live far apart and fulfill their duties. No personal contacts take place during this time, but only contact conversations over the usual means of communication, which also extends to holography contacts. During this time, the couple has to decide definitively as to whether they want to enter a lifelong relationship with each other or not. If the decision is positive from both sides, then a free marriage alliance takes place, which is announced publicly, but it is not closed, as on the Earth, by a registry office. The partnership is so free in every relation that no constraints can appear, and each partner can preserve his or her own personality, as well as everything that is in his or her own best interests. Infidelity, as this is known among the Earth humans, has no longer existed with us for tens of thousands of years. The entering of the marriage alliance is committed with us with a small ceremony, whereby the relevant spirit leader who monitored the exact circumstances of the couple during the previous 2 probationary years leads everything. And for thousands of years it has no longer happened that a partnership had to be designated as unsuitable by a spirit leader. A marriage alliance may first be entered at the age of 70 years. And if a couple first becomes acquainted with each other after the 70th year of age or shortly before it, Then, an unmarried relationship of 7 years is assigned to them, after which the special 2-year probationary period is to be passed through before a marriage alliance can be closed.
You have, however, the law that a marriage alliance of a man and women is allowed in the way that a man can have up to 4 women around himself and can, thus, maintain a marriage alliance with these. This is in accordance with the naturalness that a man can copulate with several women, but not a woman with men, which is why every woman can only be attached to one man.
That is of correctness.
And how do the women get along with this? And how do the men behave? And how does it stand with the satisfaction of sexuality, whereby I also address the single ones? Abstinence would also be interesting to explain, since you understand something else by it than what the Earth humans do.
Your first question can be answered with the fact that the women have no problems with the law that each one can have only one man, but every man can have up to 4 women in his marriage alliances. There is no jealousy among the several wives of one man. Also, it is not the case that all women or men enter a marriage alliance. Rather, some remain completely single or lead an unmarried relationship with a partner, which is also possible for same-sex couples. Once men are in an alliance with a partner or with several of these, they do not turn to any other women in the way that they would have sexual contacts with them, for such are, in fact, only maintained in partnerships. If a single state is given, then an intimate friendship which allows a sex life can very well exist. But on the other hand, there are also single females and males who live free of sexual relationships, and their reasons for this are of the most diverse and absolutely personal nature. Thus, there are with us, in reference to the exercising of the sex life, marriage alliances, unmarried relationships, or intimate friendships, which allow a sex life. Prostitution last appeared with us plea-arens 34,761 years ago, and since then has never been exercised again. At that time, a provision for its prohibition was also issued, in reference to the practice and utilization of the degrading form of sexual love servants. And all plea-arens have always strictly held to it. And since that time, even when other worlds are visited, etc., no plea-aren has violated this regulation. Consequently, they would also never take advantage of love servants. All plea-arens are able to control their sexual desires in such a way that they would never commit a wrong action in this regard. Thus, for 34,000 years, the whole thing has also had the effect that since then, no more sexually transmitted diseases have ever appeared among the plea-arens, as was previously the case. This may sound very unlikely and strange to the Earth humans, but it corresponds to the actual truth. As for abstinence, our established determination-related interpretation of abstinence does not mean that a sex life will not or should not be maintained. With us, sexual abstinence means that we control ourselves in our sex lives in such a way that no descendants are witnessed, and therefore, we give ourselves to abstinence in this respect. This guideline applies to all single persons, as well as to all couples who live in unmarried relationships. But this likewise applies to couples in marriage alliances, when the established maximum of 3 children has been witnessed. In this regard, our guidelines are based on the fact that only actual couples in regular marriage alliances may witness descendants. Otherwise, they have to control themselves sexually in such a way that no descendants are witnessed. But this does not mean, as I already explained, that a sex life is not supposed to be or is not allowed to be maintained. For with humans, the sex act, in contrast to animals, etc., is not just a pure act of propagation or of generating descendants. Rather, It is also conditioning for the health of the psyche and the physical body, which is why for the human species, a controlled sex life, but one that is held within the normal framework, is of enormous importance.
Thanks. Your explanations should probably be detailed enough. Can you now tell me when and by whom the first mechanical clockwork on Earth was invented and created? As one explained to me, this is not well known. Do you know anything at all in this respect?
It was a man named Agarish Sickle who invented the first mechanical clockwork in the middle of the 13th century. He lived in the city that is now named Cologne.
So no Swiss can claim the honor of being the inventor of the first mechanical clockwork, even though the best precision clocks are produced in Switzerland. This supposition was indeed expressed.
Really?
Yes, it was actually supposed that a Swiss had invented the first mechanical clockwork. But for me, this makes no difference, and I may grant Germany this plus point of the invention history. And as we are talking about technology, the question is whether you can explain how energy is obtained from Era's thermosphere, which, like with us, is around 2,000 degrees hot, if you may explain this.
The fact that we obtain energy from the thermosphere does not fall under secrecy. Concerning the technical details, however, I may give no information officially because according to our directives, this would be an unauthorized intervention in the technological development, which would plunge the Earth humans into a catastrophe. Once it is considered that the Earth humans repurpose practically all their valuable technological inventions and achievements in apparatuses and devices, in order to cause destruction with these, especially in terms of wars and the destruction of nature, then they would also abuse these insights. If the earthly scientists would have knowledge of the utilization of the thermosphere's energy, then they would construct the thermosphere energy technology into an all-destroying weapon, by which entire countries could be burnt to ashes within seconds.
I take it from your words that the utilization of such a weapon from the thermosphere's energy would be much more powerful, worse and devastating than this could ever be, even through the strongest atom bomb. It would probably burn everything to ashes and cinder and perhaps even melt the rock in the soil. Am I right in this acceptance?
Your acceptance is exactly correct. Through a weapon of this kind, microorganic life would also be destroyed until deep into the soil.
Am I also right, then, in accepting that the thermosphere of the Earth provides practically inexhaustible energies?
Yes, that acceptance is also of correctness.
It's good that the Earthlings cannot use this energy of the thermosphere yet, and still have no technological possibilities with it. Then still another question, what all can stress cause?
Stress is a very dangerous factor that attacks and damages the immune system, through which the body becomes vulnerable to all sorts of illnesses. Therefore, if a person suffers from stress, then he must also count on various illnesses, which relate to the body and all its organs, as well as to the entire autonomous or autonomic nervous system and everything connected with it. However, the thoughts and feelings are also impaired by stress, through which also psychological and consciousness-related impairments and psychological illnesses can appear. So, for example, also neuroses, psychopathy, and psychoses, etc., are caused by stress.
In my opinion, psychological terror produces unusually great stress, I think.
That is of correctness.
Years ago, you once said that also in the new millennium, several new diseases and illnesses will arise, of which, until then, the people will still have no notion and will be affected by these. Occasionally, it should also concern diseases or illnesses that transfer from animals, birds, and fish to humans, and thus break through the species barrier, which will then cost many human lives. Also, diseases and illnesses from outer space should be introduced at a later time, if I remember your words correctly.
You have a very good memory, my friend.
Thanks. Priest Zimmerman already said, without me wanting to express self-praise, that I am a mnemonic.
Mnemonic, that word is unknown to me.
Sorry. It's also not a German word but rather a Greek one. It means to have a very good memory. The term derives from Greek mythology, in which the Greek goddess of memory and the mother of the muses bears the name Mnemosyne.
Thanks for the instruction. That really was unknown to me.
One really cannot know everything. Just think of how often I stand like a donkey on a mountain when someone tells me something that sounds to me as though a cow would speak in Spanish.
Probably a bad comparison since you understand some Spanish.
I am really no longer far along with that, as well as not with various other languages, with which I could get by in different countries. Since I do not need them anymore, they are largely lost to me. Just with Greek and English, I can still speak somewhat brokenly. But if, now, my comparison with the Spanish-speaking cow does not suit you, then I can also say that the things that are often said to me appear as Chinese or as incomprehensible hieroglyphs to me.
I have very well understood the sense of your words. It's just that the comparison seemed to be somewhat inappropriate, since you—
All right, my friend. You sometimes just take everything too literally. But I am now at the end of my tether.
Again, that is such an expression.
Which means that I know nothing more, or that I have nothing more to explain and nothing more to ask.
So that is meant. Well, then I would now like to drink another glass of your good wine with you, if you still have this beverage.
You probably mean the peach wine. Of course, I still have that here. I am honestly glad that I may offer you a glass and may drink one together with you. I can suffer a glass, because of my medicines, you know. Then here, you can take the glasses out of the cupboard. Meanwhile, I will bring in the bottle from outside.